This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am joined all the way from Wairarapa today, New Zealand, by two winemakers, Paddy Borthwick and Briony Carnachan. How are you both today? I believe you're just about to start your harvest.
Yeah, I think Jamie, we're mostly 4 to 5 weeks away, and it's looking great. It's been quite a dry summer, which is good for the grapes, and for us, the Pinot's looking great. Good yields, good balance. Everything's just been doing a bit of green thinning through some of the blocks, and it all looks in good shape. So pretty excited. But like everything, New Zealand being the island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and all the climatic influences. We've still got 5 weeks to go to get the grapes into the winery. So, but at this stage, looking pretty positive. So I think Brian and I are pretty excited about 2024 vintage.
Super,
So,
super. Now, Paddy, you've been around for around 40 vintages now, and Briony, you came on board in 2018, I believe. For those people
Yes.
unfamiliar with Paddy Borthwick as a winemaking entity, would you mind giving us a little bit of history there?
yeah. So the Borthwick Vineyard, we brought this as a bare land in 1996 and then set about and planted maybe 20 acres to start with. And didn't put the winery up until 2003.
Right.
And it was more like a new area and exciting area. But if you go back in history, back to the 1890s in New Zealand, we did have grapes growing in the Wairarapa, one of the first grapes. And then Prohibition came along in New Zealand and they pulled the grapes out. Now they've still got bottles from the 1890s, still bottled. We've tried one about 5-6 years ago now. And so it's an exciting area where we are. A bit north of Martinborough, north of Wellington by an hour. And, it's good soils, great climate for grape growing. It used to be an area where they'd grow seed peas just because of that low humidity.
Right.
And, the drying of the soil going into, not for lambs or cropping. So this is coming up, so what is it, 24 years in this vineyard. And I think every year we get a little bit better at it. So a bit of a learning experience every year, and that's the challenge, I suppose, to make a better bottle of wine every year. Would be the ultimate.
Super, super. Now, Briony, before you came on board with Borthwick Vineyards, you had made wine all over. What were your impressions of the Borthwick Winery and their wines before you came on board?
You put in the spot now.
That's the idea.
And actually, I moved to the Wairarapa in 2013. So for me, tasting the wineries that were sort of north of Martinborough was new to me.
Yes, yeah.
And I sort of quickly identified that the Gladstone Valley was producing some really great Pinot because of the river terrace flats that we have. We're right on the Ruamahanga River, and there's about 3 terraces. And Paddy's vineyard is on the bottom terrace, so closest to the river. And obviously extremely free draining, so the vigor of the vines is naturally controlled. Same with the crop level. Generally at flowering, we get just sort of a nice even flower, which means we get a really nice bunch shape. So I'd sort of identified, if I was going to be moving around, that the Gladstone sort of vineyard area was where I would probably head. Yeah, and a really hot, dry summer, which is what we're actually currently having, and is generally the regular situation. We get sort of that really nice glycerol ripe fruit weight from the vineyard, and we get quite a nice sort of white flower as well as stone fruit character in through a lot of the white wines as well. So we've got quite a few different wines that we make from the vineyard, as well as Pinot Noir. We do a range, which is also really good. I enjoy that.
Super, super. Now you both list your profession as winemaker on your website. How do you distribute that work between the two of you?
Well, look, I think I'll jump in, but I think like we work pretty well together, and I think the great thing is different people have different palates, and Briony's got her style of wine that she likes, and I've got my style, and I think when you put them together, it becomes like quite interactive, and you get a better result. I suppose like having blending up a Pinot. The one Pinot looks good, another one looks good, and you put them together and you get a better Pinot. So I guess Briony does a lot more of the day-to-day management of the winery and the vineyard during the season, and so I'll be here for vintage and we'll get through vintage and look at some blends and wines. And then quite often I'll be off and start doing some marketing and selling, and then come back and back here. And so yeah, I think Briony does a lot of the, I guess you call it day-to-day winemaking management during the year, and pretty much runs the place, I suppose.
Okay.
When I'm not here.
Yeah, it's a very collegial sort of situation at heart. Like when we're getting to this time of year, we're both out there together, instinctively getting an idea of where we think things are, and each of us picks up something different.
I hear you.
And then when it comes into the winery, it's just actually about getting through everything. So we generally have areas of the production that we manage ourselves, and then if either of us needs that extra hand, we work pretty closely together. And then when we're tasting and blending, there's quite a good discussion about, at ferment time when we're pressing off the Pinots, we're tasting every day together. We're making sure that we listen to each other. So if Paddy really likes something and I'm like, or if I really like something, then we both just allow each other to have those choices, which is, I think, really important. But the main thing is we get good fruit, and we identify which blocks are really good, and we make sure we make those great decisions right from the picking through to barrel selection and what we're doing when we're finishing.
Super. You mentioned that you both have different palates. Briony, how would you describe Paddy's palate, and conversely?
Terrible.
That's a great question too, because we have two wines where with our top tier Pinot, where we have the left hand, which is my barrel selection and my palate preferences, and then Paddy's is the right hand.
Nice.
Generally, I describe the differences as that Paddy really nails getting that sort of quite voluptuous mouthfeel with his tannins, and I sort of go more for a more aromatic, maybe slightly more linear palate structure. We do have some differences in tannin preference sometimes as well. It's just the way it is. I think when it all comes together, it actually looks really great. One year we actually blended the left and the right hand together, and the resulting wine was awesome. So it was good. Yeah.
Which brings me rather neatly in the Ontario market. This is a very special Pinot Noir, 2021 vintage, and it's the Paper Road Pinot Noir, I believe, right?
Yes, totally. Yes, so we do, Jamie. We do three different Pinots, and look, it'd be amazing to think that every grape that we picked off our vineyards was amazing, for Pinot. But Pinot's not like that. It's some years some are better than others. They're still good, but some just have this little bit more edge in them. And so we do the left and right hands up the very top, and that's more what we call the personalities of Pinot. So Briony picks her best, 3 barrels, and I'll pick my 3 barrels, and then we do the estate vineyard, and that's generally maybe 600 cases because it's a full tank, and then it forces you to pick your best 30 barrels, out of our single home vineyard, and that becomes a representative of a Pinot from a single vineyard in a single vintage in a year. And then we have Paper Road, which is more, for me, Paper Road's more about this beautiful Pinot fruit in the bottle. It's not about making this big Pinot, it's just gorgeously sweet fruited, fantastic fruit flavors. It's often a blend of vineyards, and it's about purity of fruit. And so that's how we look at the Paper Road Pinot as a selection at the end of it, after we've taken our top 2 tiers out, and then we'll see what's left. And usually it's more about that just good fruit flavor in the bottle, purity of fruit. And look, I think it still ages, it still looks good as it gets a bit of time in the bottle. 21 vintage was pretty amazing. It was an absolute ripper for us for Pinots. And so the Paper Road, looks fantastic. And I think it's great that, the LCBO or, Ontario have got this wine that's actually had a little bit of time in the bottle to show the true Pinot. And Wairarapa, we get that savoury, earthy, gamey character of Pinot as it gets, 18 months, 2 years in the bottle. They get that beautiful softness, richness, and that savoury earthiness coming through. It's just red fruited, and just shows its real true colours, I think.
What type of oak regime does the Paper Road go through?
So most of the Paper Road Pinot would go to barrel. Some of it will stay in the tank, and just because we don't have enough barrels every year to put everything in, all the Pinot into barrels. And that's, it sits in there, and you retain that fruit freshness in the tank. And then otherwise it'll go mostly to barrels. And it's not about trying to use as much new oak, because I feel like if you get good fruit, we want the fruit to come forward and not be dominated by a whole lot of oak as the preferential characteristic of a Pinot. I think that's what, we're called climate viticulture, and it does show that, the red fruits, and that's what we want to come forward in the wine when we do the Paper Road.
Now, I know that you do quite a bit of travelling, Paddy, and so you must show the Paper Road Pinot in so many different markets, at so many winemakers' dinners and tastings and the like. Where do you see the Paper Road at the dinner table?
I think ultimately we see the Paper Road as personally, I love to chill it a little bit. I think Pinot, it's sort of 14 degrees. It's not the temperature of a white wine, but I just feel like with that freshness of the fruit and the little bit of oak in there, that when it's chilled, I feel like it tightens the wine and brings that fruit forward like a white wine. And I think that's at its ultimate. On the dinner table, I think it's a fantastic, for want of a dangerous word, an everyday wine to just enjoy. And then you go up to the estate, and he's the more serious, for people who have, tried a lot of Pinots and really want to dissect and decipher and analyse what they see in a really good Pinot. But the Paper Road, it's all about purity of fruit and just drinkability, enjoyability. That's what we call it.
Briony, how do you enjoy your Paper Road Pinot?
I actually really enjoy it sort of when you don't feel like something super heavy. Say early-ish in the evening or after dinner when you've had a rich dinner. I just enjoy having a glass of it with its sort of fruit and freshness and sort of medium bodied sort of style. It's just enjoyable to just sort of have a glass without food as well.
Yes.
I just, it's also sort of a wine that is still punches above its weight in terms of a bit of fruit weight. So it's actually just quite pleasant to enjoy with people that don't know a huge amount about wine either. It's like a good introduction to Pinot Noir from the Wairarapa. I think it's quite appealing to quite a broad palette.
And so why is it called Paper Road?
So the paper road, we actually have a paper road that runs right through the middle of the vineyard. And so the paper roads, they're all through New Zealand. And I guess when you look at the cartography and a flat piece of paper, and they drew the maps and the roads, and they just said, right, this road's going to go here, and they did the big squares. And then there's a road that comes from the main road, which would be maybe 8 kilometers away, comes straight down, and the road continues straight on through the vineyard and then hits the river. Right. But that road is formed on paper in the council in their filing cabinet, but it's not actually formed. Now they have the right to put those roads in any time because they are a paper road. Even though we own the land, they are there for the council for long-term planning. But what happens, Jamie, they come down from the main road 8 kilometers, and then there's a big cliff down to the bottom terrace. And now the natural road follows the terrace because that was the easiest way to put the road in. But on paper, that road goes right through the vineyard. So they'll never, people can walk on the paper roads. They're legally allowed to, yeah. And that's just paper road. So that's why it's called Paper Road.
Terrific. I wish I had a bottle with me right now and I could be enjoying it just before my dinner, but unfortunately that is not to be this time. Thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today. We wish you all the best with the upcoming harvest, and hopefully at some point in the not too distant future, we will see both of you up in Toronto, up in Ontario at some point in the market up here. But until then, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Jamie. Enjoy.
Thanks,
Take care. Bye-bye.